Hi, welcome to Green Education. We are presenting today Maximizing Financial Aid. And first, we want to thank the Boys and Girls Club of Palm Beaches for supporting this workshop, inviting us to speak with you. We're honored to be asked to speak with you, and we intend to continue supporting you moving forward. So, we are here to share insider secrets and changes to the upcoming financial aid process. So, why should you listen to us? Well, we're composed of three main uh, people. George Gonzalez, he's a focused innovator, results generating sales professional with track record and strong relationships. In the last 26 years, worked with Fortune 500 companies. And his focus is to help you increase your knowledge to protect and grow your wealth while helping you reduce your tax liability with comprehensive, reliable solutions that'll work for both college and for retirement planning. Ken Tolchin, he has a career track that includes public accounting, controllership, insurance, and financial services. But his story actually hits a little bit closer home. One of his students decided to go to a school and they didn't know how to do this whole process, didn't apply for financial aid and received zero from that school. And this is a school that is historically generous with financial aid. So he's got a worthy goal of sending your children to their dream school with, of course, not affecting your retirement goals or having to raid your retirement funds to accomplish that, and but to be able to pay for college and still be able to afford retirement. My name is Barbara Miller, and I'm an expert in admissions and student positioning. And I've helped thousands of families to save tens of thousands of dollars on the cost of college and to guide their students to their dream fit school. And since 2012, I have worked with presenting over 300 free educational workshops on how to navigate through the maze of college planning without financial, emotional, or mental stress. Now, while I have not previously worked in the education arena, I have spent over 35 years in recruiting and human resources. And let me point out that getting noticed by schools is parallel to getting noticed by a corporation. You're competing for a spot, they're looking for the candidate that best fits that spot. Provide expertise with career research and selection, student positioning, test prep, basically determining which is the best fit test for your student, and school selection. And I provide a step-by-step guide to creating resumes, recommendations, admissions essays, and the entire admissions application. So why are you here? Well, you're here because no one's giving you the entire picture, both good and bad, regarding financial aid. You want your student choosing the right school for the right reasons at the right price. And that's what we do. Now, the information is going to be general in nature, seeing that everyone's personal financial situation is complex and very different. So due to this, we do offer a free initial consultation of one-on-one time to review your specific and individual situation to see if we can help you. If we can, we will go ahead and make sure that we find time for that. So let's start by first discussing what is financial aid. So financial aid consists of scholarships, grants, work study, and loans. And we need to make sure that once you include need-based aid outside scholarship, the school's history for covering your need, that you can pay the remaining out-of-pocket expenses. So before we can explore ways of covering your need, we need to look at how your need is determined. And before we do that, let's just take a look at the rising cost of college first. So as you can see, the current cost of 4 years at an in-state public university is about $84,000 minimum. And the cost for 4 years at an elite private university can reach well over $320,000. And that's with the cost of attendance projected to increase about 5% each and every year. And when you take into account that only 43.7% of freshmen will graduate in 4 years, well, those figures skyrocket. And if your student's interested in an out-of-state public university, well, you can expect the cost to be approximately $45,000 to $60,000 per year. These schools are aware that they are popular and don't need to offer scholarships or money to entice students to attend or to apply or attend. And they do not give any need-based or out-of-state or need-based aid to any out-of-state students. And this is all for one child. So the good news is most people think, and most professional advisors included, that college planning is just saving for college. In fact, good college planning is all about saving on the cost of college. When it comes to college planning, while we are consistent in the strategies to use, there is no one size fits all solution. Your family is going to use a unique combination and blend of strategies. But if you know the ins and outs of the process and better understand it, then you can work within that framework. You can also turn the process around so that you manage it, and you can take advantage of the process as opposed to the process taking advantage of you. It all starts with the basics. So first, we want to show you the simplified version of the current student financial aid delivery system. Now you can see how complex and confusing this is, and how many people feel that they can navigate this. Yeah, I feel your pain. So aid comes from several different avenues, but unless you're in the military, veterans benefits are not available to you. So there's benefits from employers. There's private sources like your outside scholarships, state programs, college resources, federal grants, and as you can see, the biggest one is federal loans. And these actually can be broken into two types of aid. And there are only two types of aid. One is merit aid, and this comes from the admissions department. And you are typically notified at the same time as your decision, and it's based on how your student stands out among other applicants. It is free money and it never gets paid back. That's merit aid. Then there's need-based aid. Need-based aid, that comes from the financial aid department. It consists of grants, which are free, low to zero interest loans, or work study. Whatever fancy names are used, though, it's either free money, or it's a loan, or it's something you have to work off. Now, let's talk for a second about merit aid. Merit aid comes from the admissions office, as I said, and it's free money based on how your student stands out among other applicants in the form of scholarships. And schools have scholarships from 5 different sources. Academic scholarships, that's based on your GPA, transcripts, test scores. Talent scholarships, based on a specific talent or your ability in a specific sport. Artistic talent, which is based on a portfolio performance or audition. And achievement scholarships, based on anything from your community services, leadership roles, earning an IB or ACE diploma. And there's also endowment scholarships, which come from outside sources for that school. Also, sometimes you have to look out for department scholarships. That comes from specific departments for specific degrees. Now, merit aid, though somewhat predictable, is not guaranteed, as it is based on how your student outshines other applicants. Well, since we don't know the other applicants' GPA, test scores, resumes, recommendations, essays, honors, any of that, it's impossible to say without a doubt that a student will receive merit aid. We can, however, determine need-based aid. And one of the reasons, just so you know, we don't include merit aid or Bright Futures when determining our out-of-pocket costs is, as I said, neither is guaranteed. Now, Bright Futures, which many of you are depending on, also almost had major cuts and changes this year. One of them being that your student's Bright Future scholarship would be reduced by the number of AP, IB, ACE, dual enrollment, whatever credits that they've earned. Of course, we devoted a significant amount of time and effort to prevent this, but you need to be aware that this may not be around when your student's going to need to attend college. That could be cut by then. So you have to so we recommend you don't count on it. But need-based aid is based on a fixed formula. And one of the keys to understanding aid is knowing the formula that gets applied to it. So let's start with some key terms. What you're going to see here is your basic formula for financial aid. And we're going to speak in acronyms, or as I like to say, alphabet soup. So here's the big formula. Write this down. COA, which is cost of attendance. So cost of attendance, what that is each and every year, every school must supply the Department of Education with their published rate, their retail sticker price. And the cost of attendance covers hard costs and soft costs. Now, hard costs, those are the ones that you are billed for typically twice a year by the school. You know, your tuition and fees, dorms, meal plan, health insurance. And I include health insurance because the school will charge you for that if you don't show that your student's on your health insurance plan. So you want to take the time and compare their health insurance plan and what you have. Soft costs are variable costs, such as books, supplies, transportation, and miscellaneous. The retail sticker, this is the worst case scenario, but we do not decide on what schools will be affordable based on the cost of attendance. Relax, I'm going to show you how to calculate what your cost will be. That's the number you need to know. And that number is your student aid index, which you're going to hear as the term SAI. For those following the news, this was formerly called your expected family contribution, or EFC, now going to be called your student aid index, or SAI. So write that down, EFC/SAI. So it takes into account parents' accounts and income and assets, students' income and assets, rolls them into a proprietary formula similar to your FICO score for your credit. And then it calculates a number that they believe is an amount of money that you as a family can afford to invest annually in education for that student. So you subtract that from the cost of attendance, and then the difference between the cost of attendance and your student aid index is your need, your financial need. So your building block number one is to calculate your expected contribution, your EFC or SAI. That's going to be number one. So your student aid index. On December 21st, Congress passed the FAFSA Simplification Act, which did away with the expected family contribution, or EFC, and replaced it with the student aid index, or SAI. College is going to use the SAI to determine your eligibility for financial aid, and the SAI is the minimum you are expected to contribute towards college cost. Here's an important fact. They do not take into account any debt, such as your bills or car payments or credit card debt, taxes you might owe, none of that. They also do not consider if you have more than one student going to college anymore. Here are the significant changes to the financial aid formula. So your first allowance is your income protection allowance. So the Department of Education does allow a portion of your income to be exempt from the financial aid formula. The parent income protection allowance is going to increase, which partially compensates for the fact that no longer going to make allowances for having more than one student in college. Number two, your assets, they are going to take a double hit. First of all, the parent asset protection allowance will decrease. That means that more of your assets will be assessed in the student aid index. And the asset assessment is going to increase from 5.6% to more than double at 10%. Now, the student income protection allowance is going to increase from 64.20 to 94.10, at least a little bit of good news. But keep in mind that any money that your student earns over 94.10 is now going to be assessed at 50% off. And that's whether the student's dependent or independent. And the student asset assessment will remain at 20%. So anything in your student's name is going to be assessed at 20%. And there is no allowance. So these are the factors that determine your student aid index. The parent adjusted available income, which is a sum of your income assessment, asset assessment, net, your business net worth adjustment. Asset amounts are the amounts in checking and savings, time deposits, money markets, investments, trusts, stocks, bonds, derivatives, securities, trust accounts, qualified education benefits, annual amount of child support received, the net value of real estate, vacation homes, anything. This simplified formula will benefit families whose income is less than 100,000, whose assets are less than 100,000. Please keep an eye open for the student aid index calculator that we will try to have up on our website soon. So as you can see, you may be penalized for savings. So the Department of Education assumes that any assets that are outside of your retirement plans must be for college. 12% of your investments will count towards your student aid index. So if you are not making more than 12% on your savings, you're actually going to be losing money. So let's look at the investments. They include real estate, but depending on the forms, not the school, not necessarily the home in which you live. Rental properties, trust funds, UGMA and UPMA accounts, money market funds, mutual funds, certificates of deposits, stocks, bonds, securities, that kind of stuff. Investments also include qualified educational benefits or education savings like your CoverDells, your 529 savings plans, or the refund value of your 529 prepaid tuition plans. Yes, this includes your 529 plans. I know, tax-free savings plan where any growth in the plan is completely tax-free. Sounds good to everyone, right? Well, the federal government says, so here's the federal government. They say, I've got this really great plan for you. Save money for college like a good parent. You can have that money tax-free on the gain and everybody wins. Parents go, yay, we love that. But that's the IRS's rules, okay? So then you're going to go stand in line to apply for financial aid. And what does the Department of Education say about your 529 plan? Well, 12% of the 529 plan will count towards your expected contribution. So if you have 50,000 in each student's name, being assessed at 12%, you've lost $12,000 in financial aid per year, which is $48,000 of financial aid lost. But I'm going to take it a step further. Many of the private schools going to move that asset because their money, their rules, out of the parent's name and put it in the child's name. Now, why do they do that? Well, who's the plan for? The student is the beneficiary of this asset, right? So the college is going to say, no, 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 no. I don't care what the Department of Education says. That's an asset for the student to go to college. Formula says students' assets are calculated at 20%. You almost lose most of it. Now, before you walk out of here tonight and go to the bank tomorrow and rip out all the money in your 529 plans, remember that this is circumstantial. It is based on the family circumstances. So this is just one of the areas where we have strategies and solutions. So anyone here have Florida prepaid? Well, I want to start out by saying this might be one of the best return on investments that you have. And if you paid for housing too, then you are way ahead. But keep in mind, Florida prepaid only covers part of the bill. And it, for in-state public universities, there's still the cost of housing, meal plans, books and supplies, miscellaneous costs. And if it's not a private, if it's not a in-state public university, the difference between what it would cost in-state and what it would cost for a private school. Keep in mind, though, that your Florida prepaid is an investment, and as an investment, it's going to be assessed at 12% towards your expected contribution. But two little bits of good news. First of all, they're going to assess it at what the refund value is, meaning the amount that you originally put in, not what it's actually going to be worth when you use it. And another little bit of good news, since it is an investment and not a state plan, you can use this value at any school, public or private, in-state or out-of-state. Now, investments that are excluded, they may not be included. sometimes the house you live on, able accounts, and retirement plans. Other investments that also you do not include are UGMAs and UTMAs, but that's because you are not the owner, the student is. So you want to, so that's going to be again assessed at 20%. And in attempting to simplify the FAFSA, Congress made parenthood on the FAFSA more complicated, of course. Now, if you're a dependent student's parent, if a dependent student's parents are married and not separated, or the parents are unmarried but live together, both parents are required to report their income and asset information on the FAFSA. If the parents file separate federal tax returns, both parents' income and asset information must still be reported on the FAFSA. When a dependent student's parents are divorced or separated, but not remarried, the responsible parent for filing the FAFSA is based on which parent can provide more financial support to the student, not the parent necessarily with whom the student resides. So the simplified FAFSA no longer considers where the student lives, only the parent responsible for filing the FAFSA and CSS profile is the parent who can provide the greater portion of the student's financial support. Now, remember, you're listening to me, I am saying who can, so it's not a matter of willingness, it's a matter of ability. And if the custodial parent has remarried, let's pretend that one of you has remarried. The income and assets of the custodial parent's spouse, so the step parent, must be included on the FAFSA if they're married as of the date the FAFSA was filed. The same is with the current rules. However, previously, the FAFSA would take into account prenuptial agreements regarding whether to include the step parent's income and assets. That is no longer the case. So even if you have a prenuptial agreement, doesn't matter, the step parent's income and assets are going to be calculated. Again, they're looking at the ability, not the willingness. Okay, but how will they know if you're entering financial information of the parent with the better financial status? Well, if your student is applying to top universities that require the CSS profile, which are typically the ones that have the money to give, there's a good probability that the school will also require what's called the non-custodial CSS profile. So they're going to see both parents' finances. And the new FAFSA gives them the authority to change the FAFSA to the person with the better financial position. So it is important to know in advance what the student aid index will be for both parties. And every year I have someone say, well, I'll just declare myself independent. So let's have a word about dependent student versus independent student. Colleges and the government consider your student to be a dependent until the age of 24. They earn their first undergraduate degree. They cannot claim that they are an independent student if you are unable or unwilling to pay for their education. A few exceptions to this are the following. If your student's a foster child, a ward of the state, if he's documented homeless person, if you're incarcerated, if you're the legal guardian other than his or her parents. This includes grandparents, foster parents, legal guardians, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, not parents that adopt students. Then you're the legal guardians. And to be legally emancipated minor, your student needs to provide proof of maturity, financial independence, meaning they can fully support themselves without your assistance, and they live independently and separate from you. So yeah, your student's going to be dependent. So the second step to the plan is knowing what forms each school is going to require. So let's take a quick look at the forms. We've looked at the changes to the FAFSA. So now let's take a moment and explore the entire financial aid process. There are several steps to financial aid, and it all begins with the FAFSA. Every school is going to look at the FAFSA to determine your expected contribution. There are also about 500 of your top universities that also want you to submit the CSS profile to determine your eligibility for institutional aid. That means money straight from the school. Some schools have their own financial aid application. some instead of the CSS profile, like Princeton University, some in addition to the CSS profile, such as Georgia Tech or USC. And you may be asked to submit several other forms, and we're going to go over those. So as I said, the top 500 schools want you to submit the CSS profile. These are the schools with the big endowments. And in order to be eligible for the institutional aid, they want more information. The CSS profile is completed through College Board. It's important to check the financial aid instructions from each individual school to determine which forms are required for the financial aid process and when. The CSS profile, the non-custodial CSS profile, if applicable, verification forms, tax documents, and if the school uses IDOC. Once you have verified with the school that they require the CSS profile, you're actually going to go to that. It's called cssprofile.collegeboard.org. So some of the questions they ask on the CSS profile are going to be questions about your retirement accounts, next year's or this year's expected income, child support if applicable, housing information, asset information, additional real estate, businesses or farms, expenses, but limited to medical, dental, and student loans, any trust that whether it's you or your husband or your spouse or your students have trust from the grandparents, anybody, and dependent education expenses. If you have a younger student and or older student that's either attending another university or attending a private high school or university. Some schools, as I said, will consider the equity in your home as an asset. So you do need to find that out. While many other questions are straightforward, it's crucial that you know how to answer these questions. For the amount your student expects to receive from you, what should you put there? I know how many of you want to put zero, probably all of you. You can't put zero. The school knows that you will be contributing at least some amount. You want to enter an amount less than or equal to your student aid index or expected contribution. But Barb, what if my expected contribution or SAI is zero? You want to enter a minimum amount, such as $500. Let's face it. If your student was living at home, you would spend at least that just on meals alone. Okay, but the other question you want to look at is the question about relatives other than their parents and any other sources providing funds to help pay for college expenses. That's where you put the zero. But Barb, what if my grandmother or relative is going to be helping to pay for college? Best way to do that, there are ways of doing that where it will not affect your expected contribution, and come to us. We'll see if we can help you with that. And the CSS profile also has a section where you can actually provide a written explanation of special circumstances. And if the 320 questions that you just answered wasn't enough, some schools have additional questions. And sometimes they even repeat what you just filled out on the CSS profile. As I mentioned, some schools will also require that you complete their own institution-specific financial aid application. Apparently the 100+ questions on the FAFSA and 300+ on the CSS profile are not enough. Some of the information that you will be asked to provide is going to be filling out verification forms, which is going to include verifying people in your household, your tax filing status, and any untaxed income and assets. And sometimes they will ask you to provide your tax return transcript, even if you were able to upload your tax information to the FAFSA using the IRS data retrieval tool. And you can do this right on the IRS website. You go to irs.gov, click on Get Your Tax Return. Some schools, if you didn't file a tax return, well, some schools were just going to have you complete a non-tax filer statement. Others will want you to provide an IRS verification of non-filing letter. So you can order a verification of non-filing form by using IRS form 4506-T and checking the box number 7. again, we recommend being proactive and ordering now to have on hand just in case. And many schools will want you to submit all your documents through the Institutional Documentation Service, or IDOC. IDOC, also run by College Board, collects your documents and submits them to participating schools on your behalf. Originally, it was created to help save on work, but since all of the colleges don't use it, that does not accomplish that fact. Type of documents you're going to be asked to provide are your personal tax return, W-2s, 1099s, business tax return, if that's applicable, your student's personal tax return and W-2s. And if you're divorced, the non-custodial parents' tax and documents. In addition, you may be asked to complete supplemental forms. If you have a business, the business farm supplement, 2 verification statements. There are also some institute-specific forms that need to be completed and submitted. And then that wasn't enough. In addition to the dependent verification form, you may be asked to complete additional or supplemental forms. These can be verify your citizenship, non-tax filer statement, statement of student assets, statement of parent assets, special circumstances, information if you have an additional sibling attending another university, they will want verification of that. So those are all the forms. So the next step is you want to determine how much each school is going to expect you to pay. And this needs to be done now, preferably before your student applies to schools, but most definitely before your student accepts enrollment at a school. So let's look at the cost of a public university and a private university. Okay, so imagine you're a family of $400,000 total income, 100,000 assets plus Florida prepaid. Although your initial student aid index is about 25,000, you employ some strategies and lower your SAI to 15,000. So congratulations, pat yourself on the back. So now you have established that you have a need above $15,000. It doesn't mean that you're getting anything. The schools are not required to cover your need. So there are 3 critical questions that you need to know the answers to for each school. The first question is, what percentage of need does the school offer? Ideally, you're looking for a school that's going to offer 100%, or of course, close to that. But as you can see in this example, although we have financial need of, $8,000 plus, the school does not meet all of your need, leaving some unmet need. And who pays for that? Well, you do. And the aid doesn't have to be all gift aid. Many schools factor plus student loans in, and even parent plus loans. So now comes the second question. What is their breakdown between gift and self-help? So self-help aid is the work, study, and loans, whether it's Perkins loans, student direct loans, or parent plus loans. So this is another question that's important, because let's say, for example, a school gives 60% gift and 40% self-help, while another school offers 75% gift, 25% self-help. Well, that second school, you could end up paying significantly less compared to the first one because of that. So your real cost or out of pocket is the sum of your student aid index or expected contribution of 15,000, your unmet need, and the self-help aid for a total of 20,838. Now, spoiler alert here, for these examples, we are not including any possible state merit aid, such as Bright Futures, or any institutional merit aid. We are only looking at need-based aid. The other school we're going to look at is a private college, and obviously the cost of attendance is almost triple that of the public university example. But we're going to do the same thing. We are going to subtract the SAI, and we come up with the financial need, which naturally, due to the difference in the cost of the public university example, it's much higher. But look what happens when you see the aid package. the entire financial need is met. So as you can see, there's no gap to add to the, so your cost is going to be 15,000. Furthermore, the private school gives 97% gift aid and only 3% self-help. So as it turns out, because of the big difference in the ability of the private school to meet your financial need, the school that appeared to be out of reach is actually going to cost you less out of pocket. How do you like that? Almost $4,000 less. Up, but I said 3 questions, didn't I? So here's the third question you have to ask. What is the average length of time to graduate for that student? Our goal, of course, is we want your student graduated successful and supporting themselves in 4 years. But according to the Department of Education, completing the program within 150% of the published time for that program is graduating on time. Yeah, that's 6 years. Yeah, the average public school graduation rate is 5.8 years. The average private school graduation rate is 4.2 years. So that means that a private school that seems more expensive up front might end up being cheaper option in the long run because you're saving time. And there's a number of different variables as to why your student may take more than 4 years to graduate, such as impacted classes, changing majors, not being prepared, not taking enough credits each semester, things like that. So the number 4, make sure that your student is contributing too. I mean, after all, it is his or her education and future. So have your student apply to as many scholarships as possible. This includes, but is not limited to, academic scholarships from the schools, endowment and departmental scholarships from the school, and private scholarships like the Coca-Cola Scholars or Burger King Scholarship. Make sure that you know when the applications open and when is their deadline. Many schools have deadlines for scholarships that are before the admissions application deadline. You don't want to miss those. Other keys to getting a rock star. Number 1, when being a rock star or getting a discount, being a rock star. So when the student is at the top of the applicant pool, the odds of getting a discount go up appreciably. Now, we are in no way dismissing your B student. There are literally thousands of schools where your B student is a top student and will be eligible for merit aid. Again, you got to be realistic, right school for the right reasons. Stop looking or ignore the rankings. Let's take US News and World Rankings. How many here know the criteria that makes up the US News rankings? Nobody? Right. They rank colleges based on graduation and retention rates, undergraduate academic reputation, which is derived from the peer assessment survey. So yes, they ask other colleges to rank colleges. Also, faculty resources. How much notoriety does that faculty member have? Financial resources, meaning how much do they get in endowment contributions? And the average alumni giving rate. What's missing here? How about professor performance? Relevance of curriculum to the degree, career services, return on investments. Don't you think you want some sort of assurance that after you spend upwards of $320,000 on an undergraduate education, that your student will be gainfully employed in his or her field of study? I would think so. Another thing is demonstrating interest. Demonstrating interest is such an important factor. Matter of fact, it's a very important factor on the admissions decision for many colleges, such as Boston University or American University. Keep in mind that some schools are getting over 50,000 applications. So Florida State University last year received over 60,000 applications for approximately 7,500 spots. So it's imperative that your student take steps to get noticed. Most schools track all communications with a student. And So here, if you're starting to feel a little bit confused and stressed about how to calculate this and figure this out, don't. We have you covered. This is where you just want to schedule yourself a one-on-one appointment. We will look at your special circumstances and we will determine if there's ways that we can lower that for you. So just a workshop recap. Today, you've learned about the important changes to the FAFSA, how they're going to affect you. You've learned about the financial aid process and how being an informed buyer can save you thousands. And you've learned how to price each college. So the next step is to schedule your one-on-one appointment so that we can see where you are in the process, and of course, to see if there's a way that we can help you out. Let's go over a few of the rules. If you are married, we respectfully insist that both parents must attend the meeting. Please do not ask our staff to make an exception because they will tell you no. 2, our consultations are typically $297. But if you schedule your appointment within 48 hours from seeing this, then we will go ahead and do that for free. We'll waive the consultation fee. And you can schedule it in sometime, within the next few weeks. But you do need to call us. Make sure that you have an appointment on the calendar within 48 hours. This allows you almost, a few days to schedule a meeting and a little over 4 weeks to meet with us. Hey, let's face it, if it's important to you, we will make it important to us. And our staff will do everything possible to accommodate you. You can reach us by calling the office at 833-473-3631. That's 833-GREEN-1. So I'm going to finish with a rhetorical question. Which do you choose to be an informed buyer or an uninformed buyer? Well, thank you so much for attending our workshop on financial aid. I do hope you found it informative. And again, any questions or to schedule some time to meet with us, please do call us or email us so we can go ahead and get you on our books. Thanks.